Elminster Omar, Sage of Shadowdale, is known as the Chosen of Mystra, goddess of magic in the 14th and 15th centuries of Dale reckoning. But what was he in his youth? 1,000 years before the present timeline of the Forgotten Realms, young Elminster was the young son of a noble house of the petty kingdom of Athlantar. In his time, he would be a priest, thief, fighter, and mage, before becoming the man known throughout the realms. This is his origin story. Olore, and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host Liam, aka Himvar. Today I'll be doing a spoiler-free review of Ed Greenwood's Elminster, The Making of a Mage. The book starts with a prelude set in the 14th century DR. Lord Morngrim of Shadowdale is searching for Elminster to no avail. He is left wondering about the origins of Elminster as he searches, and swiftly we come to a prologue set more than 1,000 years before, as a mysterious lady known as Murjala of Dark Eyes is traveling through the remnants of Halangorn Forest, part of the Forlorn Hills in the kingdom of Athlantar, the ancient home of young Elminster.
For those curious on where ancient Athlantar stands in the modern realms, it is on the Sword Coast in the Delambir Vale. The capital Hostarl's ruins were built upon to make the city of Secomber. Some of the people of the kingdom became part of the Blue Bear tribe and the Tree Ghost tribe of the Uthgard, and others settled in the regions of Baldur's Gate. By chapter 1, you'll notice epigraphs for each chapter, a very nice addition that I'd enjoy in just about any book. We also meet young Elminster, called El, as he watches over a flock of sheep outside of Heldon. We discover it is the year of the Flaming Forest, probably in reference to Halangorn, which, if you decide to look up, is 224 DR. Finally, we learn that Elminster's father, Elthrin, is Lord of Heldon. This truly feels like a different place from the realms I am used to. The land is a wild, petty kingdom with little order beyond whatever the most powerful person can enforce. In this case, powerful mages are de facto. With so many ancient cities and nations thrown around, a map would have been helpful. There are even short references to Tyche, so we can surmise that the Dawn Cataclysm wasn't quite complete by this point, as she is not yet the dual goddesses Tymora and Beshaba. This book is not at all over the place like many Greenwood works are. It is more meticulous and a steady march. Greenwood's writing is something you either like or dislike. I'm a big fan of just how dangerous he makes his world. People will often die suddenly and painfully in his works. He also writes female characters interestingly, and I believe he was raised by his aunt, so that likely has something to do with it. His realms also very much involve gods interacting intimately with mortals. Seeing as this is a coming-of-age tale, we jump forward in years multiple times. The first jump is 4 years into the future to 228 DR, then a shorter one to 229 DR. There's another jump that doesn't last too long in part 3, and in part 4 we go forward to 233 DR, having a few more jumps and end in 240 DR, making Elminster about 28 years of age at the end of the story. For those unfamiliar, DR stands for Dale Reckoning, which is the most popular system of reckoning in the Forgotten Realms. For your information, in 1st edition content, 1350s is predominant, and in 5th edition content, we're all the way up to the 1490s, late 1480s. For the book, one sad thing I will mention, if you know Forgotten Realms, you know Elminster, and we know he'll be okay in this origin story because we know he becomes a Sage of Shadowdale. We also know what happens to a certain goddess in 1385 DR. Part 2 was a lot more interesting than Part 1, and going into Part 3 I was excited where the story would go, especially since this part was titled Priest, and since nothing is foreshadowed of that sort beforehand, it's not much of a spoiler. The story even gets more interesting and entertaining here. As a lad, young Elminster takes the name Elidor to hide his identity from the forces of the Mage Lords in Athlantar. Later he is given an even better disguise, one you don't see very often in fantasy works of this type, and I won't spoil it. The tone of this story was refreshing. It was not full of a party of high adventurers on an epic quest, though there is a section with this. It's long and challenging and personal. I really liked it, especially with the odd twist and turn El's life takes. Also, since it's set so far before most Forgotten Realms novels, you can essentially ignore all proper nouns thrown out and just immerse yourself in the story without worrying about larger world lore. Because of this, I even suggest that this is a good place to start, though there are many such places. This story is really magical, and getting closer to the end, I started getting a little sad it was going to stop. I started to relish every page. Elminster doesn't have it easy. If he did, the story would be about 1/3 the size, and I'm pretty sure Greenwood had to shorten the tale anyhow, as there are a handful of short stories about the young Elminster in a few places online. Beyond our main protagonist of Elminster, there are other good characters that have that sense of verisimilitude and flair Greenwood conjures. Helm, Murjala, Brer, Farl, Dorigo, Dorgon, Hailmeal Lothatar, if I didn't butcher that one, were all fun to get to know. Even though magic is quite promulgated in Faerun, this is a good example of wanton, arrogant power and distrust not making a sturdy ruling foundation. My love of the character of Elminster grew tenfold during this book. He's so human, he fails, and has humor. This book wasn't perfect, the first part especially was a tad dry, but at the end I had chills and oddly even some tears in my eye for such a good wrap-up to the beginnings of the most legendary mages in Faerun. Elminster Elmar, Prince of Athlantar, Wizard, Chosen of Mystra, and so much more. Elminster is on the level of Gandalf, Dumbledore, Rincewind, Fizban, and Merlin, with his foibles making his mythical status more relatable in my mind. Elminster, the Making of Mage, is exceptional. For those who enjoy omnibuses, the first 3 books, which I believe sort of work as standalones, can be found in the hardcover annotated Elminster or the trade paperback Elminster Ascending. The former, not sure about the latter, also adds 2 sections after each novel focus on the writing of the story and another focusing on wider Forgotten Realms lore as it pertains to the story. In such, we learn that even though Elminster was Ed Greenwood's primary character for his home game set in the Forgotten Realms, he never had plans to write a book about him. When he was asked to, he wrote it in just 16 days. And somewhat surprisingly, this is not the first book Ed Greenwood wrote for the Forgotten Realms, and this is surprising since Greenwood created the Forgotten Realms, for those unaware. Elminster has been a staple since he appeared in Dragon magazine way back in 1981, but this book was released in 1994 after he had already written the first 2 books of Sandril's saga. It's also interesting to me that they purposely had Elminster dabble in all 4 of the main classes of AD&D, which makes his character arc go on quite a few journeys. You may get a small idea of those adventures based off these pictures I'm showing here at the end, since these are the pictures that show up at the start of each part for the book. I did write a review for my blog in this book back in March when I first read it, for those who want to read my spoiler-free thoughts. I do write my reviews differently than I film them, so you may enjoy the written one more as well. Well, anyways, that's my review. I am hoping to get to the second book, Elminster Myth Draenor, in September, so wish me luck on that. And if you enjoyed this video, let me know. I've recently reached 50 subscribers, which is completely insane. But again, I'm just doing this for my own enjoyment and any mutual enjoyment anyone else can get out of it. Do you want to learn more about Elminster specifically, or the Forgotten Realms generally? Or maybe you want more recommendations for Forgotten Realms novels? Let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more, and until next time, this has been Liam at Morast.